Welcome everyone, I'm Emma Miles. I'm the Inclusion Lead and Trainer at Pettypool. Today we're going to be focusing on neuro-inclusion recruitment and creating more opportunities for neurodivergent talent to thrive in the workplace and get their foot through the door. So who are we? So Pettypool is a charity based in Sandy Way, Northwich. We focus predominantly on supporting our community and supporting those with learning disabilities, neurodivergence, or a disability to thrive in their life. So again, that may be supporting our learners from the college into employment. It may be supporting our users at Pettypool in the community to thrive and become independent in their community. It may be ground up. We support young people to train in hospitality so they can work their way up into then obtaining employment. Venturewood is also outdoor inclusive education, where we support and say that anyone can explore the outdoors. And then autism practical support sits within our charity as well, and that is supporting people with a diagnosis of autism or going through the diagnosis of autism with a range of activities, support, counselling, etc. So there's lots of different areas of our organisation, and we focus predominantly on giving back to our community and developing our community. So our training outcomes today, we're going to understand neurodiversity and its relevance in recruitment. We're going to recognise recruitment bias. We're going to identify barriers that neurodivergent candidates face. We're going to apply inclusive recruitment strategies, and then we're going to commit at the end to practical recruitment strategies we can take forward. So firstly, we're going to be using this term a lot. We're going to be using the term neurodiversity. So neurodiversity refers to the natural variation in how a human brain works. It's the concept. It includes how the human brain differs in thinking and learning, in processing, and how we behave. Every single person is neurodiverse. It's the concept that the brain is diverse. Every single person has a different functioning brain. Whereas when we talk about neurodivergent, a neurodivergent person has a brain that diverges from the norm, what we consider the norm as aka the typical. A neurodivergent brain diverges from the norm, so it can affect how someone communicates, can affect how someone processes sensory input and output, attention and focus, and emotional regulation, and much more. So when we talk about a neurodivergent person, we're talking about someone whose brain diverges from the norm, and again from that can have barriers because often society processes etc are not designed for neurodivergent people. So today we're going to be talking about the fact that the barriers that neurodivergent people have when they are obtaining employment, and again recruitment is a massive part of this. So here are some stats around neurodiversity and employment. So again, only 31 of autistic adults are in employment compared to 54%. 54.7% of disabled people overall. So within that protected characteristic, autistic people are lower amongst that of obtaining employment. Neurodivergent adults face employment rates of 30 to 40%, which is 3 times higher than the other disabled groups and 8 times higher than the neurotypical individuals. 50% of neurodivergent employees have taken time off work due to lack of support. 36% report receiving no guidance or support at work, and 20% are still waiting for adjustments. So again, there's a link at the bottom if you want to look into this further, but at the moment the stats are very low. There's low amount of autistic adults and neurodivergent adults in employment, and if they are in employment they are struggling and leaving because their needs aren't being met. So the impact of exclusion, so on individuals and society. So the impact on individuals, so increased risk of mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression and burnout, loss of identity, confidence and independence as well. Reduced access to financial stability and career progression as well, and social isolation and masking behaviours. So for the actual individual themselves, they're struggling. They've not got their independence. They're not functioning in work. They're not quite sure to recognise part of their identity may be their career and where that is going to progress and where that's going to go. Impact on society and organisations. So again, even in society ourselves and organisations, this has a negative impact. The less people that are in employment, the more impact there is. missed opportunities for innovation and diverse thinking, increased public spending on benefits and healthcare, reduced productivity and team performance, and ethical and reputational risks for organisations as well. So it's really important to consider that it's not just the impact on the neurodivergent individuals themselves, it also can be an impact on society and organisations, especially around their reputation. So why do we recruit and what we're really looking for when we do? So just a question to put out there. If we could use the chat just to say, why do we recruit? What are we looking for? So when you're recruiting, for example, what are you really looking for? I'd really appreciate if you could use the chat, just some contribution around what are you looking for when you recruit? Yep, evidence of skills, really good one, Janet. Fresh ideas, yep, Tim. The right skills, experience and values to do the job. Brilliant, Ellie. Someone who brings new ideas and new perspective. Yep, Emma. Very true. A good fit. Okay, yep. Good energy. Okay. People who will work well with the existing teams. Yep. Positive attitude. Yep. Brilliant. Brilliant. And we can already see a little bit of a pattern around that. It's about skills as well, but also about the person themselves. And that's kind of what we're looking at today around when we are recruiting and we're looking for the right people for our organisation, also as well, what does that really mean? People complement other people's missing skills. Brilliant. Yeah, Emily, really true. Yeah, Gemma, someone that brings their personality, their uniqueness, motivated and enthusiastic. Yeah, brilliant. Some really good things, again, that people can bring to your organisation. It's not just about the actual role itself, which Emma says, yes, standard, Emma, do the job. We really are after someone to do the job successfully. But what does that look like? Thank you everyone for contributing. That was brilliant. Thank you. So the purpose of recruitment, we recruit because we have a job to fill. We have a job that needs doing. We want the best person for the job, but what does that look like? What defines best? And are your current recruitment processes hindering you from finding the best candidate? So again, we've talked a lot about skills within there, but a lot around the actual person themselves, their qualities that they bring as well to the role, but to the team. So could you be missing out on exceptional talent because of how you assess the right fit? We've all got an idea in our heads of what is the right fit, what is the right person we're looking for. And that can be different for very different people. And this is what it's all about, is opening changing our mindset, opening up the fact that that right fit could look different as well, and they could still get the job done. And it's looking at kind of what sits within that today. So inclusive recruitment really does matter. Why it matters? Because it's not about lowering the bar. It's not saying right now every single person you have to hire, it has to be neurodivergent. They may not be the right person for the job. It's not about that. It's about considering them. It's about widening the gates so that everyone has the opportunity to go for this, and so that you can access a full range of talent. Like we've said already, it's complementing those skills, complementing each other and working as a team, really. So research does show that more diverse teams are more innovative and creative, they make better decisions, they reflect a broader customer base, they improve employee engagement and retention. There's multiple reasons why inclusive recruitment really does benefit your organisation. And again, the more people you can have in who bring a different perspective, the more you can then develop and build your recruitment process as well. So inclusive recruitment is all about recognising the Equality Act from 2010 around that it legally protects individuals from discrimination based on protective characteristics. So neurodivergence, sits within this protected characteristic under a disability. So it's really important to recognise not every neurodivergent person feels that they are disabled. It can be very different, but under the Equality Act in the workplace, they sit underneath that disability protected characteristic. So employers must ensure that recruitment processes do not indirectly or directly disadvantage any group. So reasonable adjustments must be made for disabled candidates, including neurodivergent applicants. So how might unconscious bias influence who we see as the right fit during recruitment? So again, this comes from not a place that anyone is maliciously discriminating against neurodivergent people. That's not what we're discussing today. It's more about our unconscious bias and just being aware of that, but also looking at our processes and how our processes reduced the chances of unconscious bias reflecting on our recruitment. So recruitment bias, what is it? So recruitment bias refers to unconscious or conscious preferences that influence hiring decisions. So it's often based on personal characteristics, unrelated to job performance as well, such as background, such as how someone appears. It can be about disability or perceived similarity. So unconscious bias, again, we all grow up in a society where it's not always designed for everyone in mind. And through that, we can unconsciously have certain biases that, again, later on in life, we can be made more aware of and we can challenge. These biases can undermine fairness. It can undermine how diverse you want to be, and it can undermine how inclusive you want to be in your workplace. So just some examples of what recruitment bias can look like, in particular towards neurodivergent applicants. So for example, they didn't give eye contact the entire time. So for neurodivergent people, it can take a lot of focus and concentration to process what you're saying, but also what they're thinking and how they want to reply. So in particular, if they're having a conversation, it can take a lot of cognitive capacity to have that conversation, to be able to follow that conversation. So sometimes giving that eye contact can be even more exhausting. It can be even more to process. So particularly neurodivergent people, it can be very hard to give eye contact because they're trying to process other things. It doesn't mean they're not listening. It doesn't mean that they're rude. It doesn't mean that they're not focused on what you're saying or they're not interested or intrigued in what you're saying. It just means that they cannot process everything at once. So sometimes when they're looking away, they're trying to just process what they're saying or they want to say. They might be processing what you've asked them. But it is common for neurodivergent people to not be able to give eye contact all the time. It can come in waves. They can give eye contact sometimes. Other times, again, depending on what they're trying to process, it can be very challenging for neurodivergent people. So it's really important. A bias could be, for example, that if someone's not engaging and giving eye contact, that they're not interested. That's not the case. They pause for too long in one answer, so they must be unprepared. Again, going back to that cognitive ability, for neurodivergent people, it can take a lot to process a question and then process what they want to reply with. So if they're taking long or they're taking more processing time, it doesn't mean that someone's unprepared. It doesn't mean that they've come not really thinking about what they want to say. Sometimes, especially conversations verbally, it can be very difficult and can take longer for neurodivergent people to think of what they want to say and also process what you've asked them. So just because they're taking longer doesn't mean that they're unprepared. They ask too many questions, they might struggle with independence. So again, with neurodivergence, there can be a lot of things that can come to misunderstanding, miscommunication. A lot of it is around unclear expectations. So for neurodivergent people, if something's unclear around an expectation of a job, an expectation of a task they've been given, an expectation of a question and how they want to answer it, etc., it can be very hard for them to understand it, and it can take time to understand what's being asked of them. So just because they might ask multiple questions, they might ask you to repeat yourself, they might just need that clarity to understand what is being asked, but also they might want to be really clear about the job role itself because they might want to make sure that they've gone for the right job. Again, it's a two-way street when it comes to applications. We want to make sure that people are the right fit for the role, but also they want to make sure that we're the right place for them. So again, it's their chance to ask those questions, but they might have a lot more questions than usual. They may be overthinking, they may be having a lot of things going through their brain at once. So it's just really important that recognise that actually it doesn't mean that they're not independent, doesn't mean that they can't think for themselves. It's just that they want that clarity, and then they can then use that information to then process what they want to do next or make any decisions. They didn't seem enthusiastic enough. I know a lot of things have been around enthusiasm, positivity, which is brilliant because again, that has a really positive effect on the team. But actually, for in particular autistic people, it can be really hard to recognise, well, what does enthusiasm look like? Because of the way the brain processes things, especially communication and social interaction, it can be really hard to actually process what does that mean. If they're not, if am I enthusiastic? What does enthusiastic look like? Almost they might pretend to be enthusiastic because that's what they think you want from them, but actually they're not being them true selves. Enthusiasm may look different for some people. It may be that they're still pushing things because they're important. It may be that there are still things important to them that they care about, but that just might look different. So it's just recognizing for different people, especially when we're looking for certain qualities, and we always want our teams to get on, but actually for neurodivergent people, this may just look different, and that enthusiasm may still be there, but it may just look different. So what's the impact of this recruitment bias? So again, it limits diversity and innovation by favouring similar candidates. So again, if we were looking for the same qualities, and that the same people are getting recruited time and time again, then you're limiting your own diversity, really. You're not having those unique perspectives that we've said that we want. So it's really important to recognise that recruitment bias and the fact that actually it can mean that your team itself, the people you're hiring, aren't providing those voices for other people. Overlooks qualified individuals due to stereotypes or assumptions. So again, there are neurodivergent talent out there that are ready to be employed, that are hardworking, that want to work, but actually they may not come in clear with the positivity. They may not come in with the enthusiasm straight away. They may be nervous, they may be anxious. It may take time for neurodivergent employees to build that trust to then start showing a little bit more confidence with those interactions, etc. So it's just recognizing that those assumptions and those stereotypes that we may have, seen ourselves, grown up with, etc., may not be the case for everyone. It creates barriers for neurodivergent and disabled applicants. So again, if neurodivergent people are going for jobs time and time again, and they may not be seen as the right fit, then time and time again, they're having that barrier. They might not even get through to interview stage. They may not then get through to that employment, and that's where we're seeing those stats at the moment. It reinforces exclusionary workplace norms and cultures. Again, it's seeing the norms that everyone has to be a certain way, that everyone has to interact a certain way. Actually, the more that we understand that everyone's brain works differently, that everyone socializes differently, that everyone has different communication methods, etc., the more kind of we are presenting to our team that we have a range of people that work here. Reduces team performance by missing varied perspectives. Again, people who are neurodiverse are used to being excluded, so they can bring a really good perspective of how to include everyone. They are fantastic at having empathy as well, pattern recognition and attention to detail. There are so many strengths for neurodivergent talent out there, and it's just recognizing that might look different to the neurotypical strengths that we may always recruit for. Damages employer reputation and trust in recruitment processes. So again, time and time again, if you're rejecting disabled candidates, that does have a reflection on your reputation itself. I'm not saying that, again, that every single person with disability needs to be hired, or every single person who is neurodivergent needs to be. There is obviously a balance there. You need the right person with the skills and the experience. However, if that's happening time and time again, that reputation can be that this employer doesn't accept disabilities, and that doesn't have a good representation in society, really. So we have a range of areas to look at today around the recruitment process. So, from the moment that job advert goes out, how people apply for the job, how you shortlist for your jobs, how you interview, and how you then onboard and recruit that person. So what I really wanted to ask you really is, where do you think that bias most often creeps in during recruitment? What stages do you think, and why? I'd really like to hear your thoughts around what potential areas, where do we see the most bias creeping? Application forms, okay. Interviews based on interaction, yep, Tim. Yep, every one of them. Yep, Maureen. Yep, brilliant. Job adverts, interviews. Shortlist when you ask all the questions. Yep, Monique. Yep. Interviews, a very set way of working out if people have the skills, but focus more on social and persuasion. Yep. Yep. All of them really. Yep. And again, there's no wrong answer there. It's just considering all of them, mostly application form and interviews, shortlisting, CV, but interviews are number one. Yeah, again, there's no right answer. It's just getting your perspective on it. It can creep in any bits of these, and then we'll go through some examples now around how that does creep in. But you are correct. The interviews are the highest where it does creep in, but potentially in all these areas it does. So let's just go through where it does. So job adverts. So advert says we're looking for someone who thrives in a fast-paced environment with excellent communication skills. So this unintentionally, it never needs to be intentionally, but unintentionally excludes neurodivergent applicants by using that, the language, non-essential criteria, and coded language tied to what is the norm, what is neurotypical. So again, we're looking for someone who thrives in a fast-paced working environment. Really, what does that look like? Again, it's not to say neurodivergent or people with disability can't thrive in those environments. They can with the right support. But what does that really look like? Okay, how do you want them to thrive? Does that mean that they have to work fully independently? What does the role look like, etc.? So that's when we say trying to make it clear for people, we look at things like this, like what does that really mean for people? This again, that non-essential criteria when we are recruiting people, and we'll go through this and the process next, it's really thinking about the information that we give about who we're looking for. It needs to be essential, it needs to be clear, not a very long page of you could be this, you could be that. Where possible, think about, is that criteria really clear about exactly who they're looking for, so that people can make that judgment and say, actually, I could do that job. Application forms that require long written answers or timed sections can disadvantage applicants with dyslexia or ADHD, leading reviewers to assume the person lacked effort or clarity. So again, ideally you want an application form that takes 3 clicks. It's simple, it's able to go through. Forms that are asking you for long written answers, or again that are timed, that can be a lot of pressure on someone, especially if they process things in a different way, and that might mean they have more time. It disadvantages again someone with dyslexia who that means that basically it's around processing written information and being able to read information and processing that and what does that look like. This actually can disadvantage people because it can take them longer to process that information. So you're not really giving the time for those people to be able to actually answer those questions. And again, a very long form, especially with someone who has ADHD that has a short attention span due to that, and their brain working differently in that way, they may actually just step out of that application form and not apply in the end because it's too complicated, it's too long. So really thinking about that bias can creep in even just through a process. So actually at the moment